we get to chat with Arizona's Treasurer, Kimberly Yee. Welcome, Madam
Hi.
Treasurer.
Thank you so much. I am so pleased to be with you today. Thank you so much for inviting me to be your speaker and just sharing about the wonderful work that you do and my support for not only STEM related education for many years, but how we who work in government and public policy see not only the need for great education and being able to equip our students to be prepared for science, technology, and education, and obviously the mathematics part of it, we also need to see how that contributes to our workforce and then our economy in our great state of Arizona.
Absolutely. We are so pleased that you were willing to jump on the Zoom call with us today.
Sure.
And we're now live streaming on Facebook, so our friends can post on our live stream. But we would love for you to share your career path that led you to your current role.
I would be happy to share. So I was born and raised in Arizona. I went to Greenway High School. I don't know if you have any Greenway demons on the call. We were, in the Northwest Phoenix area, and I went on to college in Southern California at a school called Pepperdine University. And I went into public policy related issues. So political science was my background and English. At the same time I was graduating from college, I had a professor who encouraged me that before I go on to a graduate school education, that I take a year and do a fellowship. And a fellowship is where you actually work on the job and you take some academic coursework at the same time. And what a wonderful experience for me to really get into the world of public policy as it works every day. And so I went to the state capital of California, where again, I went to school there, and I worked in a gubernatorial administration. In that 1 year, I found that even a young person, as young as 22 years old at that time, can have a voice at the table in public policy. And to be able to have an idea and bring that into a conversation with public policy makers, you might be at this point where you disagree, but then you come to a middle based on the conversations around the table. I learned that's the best way to do a law, and to create bills and create conversations with people you may or may not agree with. And so those lessons I learned early on. Then I became appointed to that governor's administration as, again, a very young appointee at that time, and then moved back home to Arizona and had a wonderful experience working for the Arizona State Senate. For those of you who have ever visited the state capitol, it's downtown Phoenix, and I worked as a staff member to read all of the bills in the Education Committee and present those to the elected members of the state Senate. As they voted, they would have questions and I would be there to answer them as it went through the process. Again, working for both Republicans and Democrats at that time. And it was wonderful to be on the side of a staff member, a public policy person around the table with elected members of the state Senate. And I was assigned the Education Commission, going back to STEM. So early on in my career work, I learned about the importance of science and technology and mathematics in our education system, and how we do have shortages in those areas when it comes to teachers and expertise and experience. And I brought in ideas about how, well, let's just say you have a rural Arizona community and you have a shortage of certified teachers. Let's bring on board those who have worked in those sectors. Let's say you have a person who was a retired science teacher, but they're not working in the anymore, but yet they want to spend a few hours and help out that local school district. Well, those are called alternative pathways to teaching, but it brings in those experts in the field. They don't even have to have a teaching background in some cases. They could be totally a business professional, someone who's worked in labs as a scientist their whole lives, but they want to share their experiences with the students sitting in those classrooms. And sometimes you can't get that, in some of these areas because a teacher is just not available. So these were some ideas that we brought around the table when I worked on the Education Commission Committee. And then following that, after 5 years, I went back to California, and I worked for the then elected governor of California named Arnold Schwarzenegger. Some of you may have seen his movies. And he was the new governor in town. And I went back, I was his deputy cabinet secretary, again, working again on public policies that dealt with education, but other workforce development and other very important issues that government deals with. And then following his term, I came back home to Arizona. A state treasurer candidate was running for office. He said, if I win, can you work in my administration? And who would have thought that 15 years ago, I was working for 4 years in the Arizona State Treasurer's office as an employee. I never would have guessed that fast forward a decade and more later, I would be the state treasurer of Arizona, elected statewide. And again, what a blessing. But it was these experiences as a staff person working really behind the scenes, preparing me for these very experiences that I would be able to do as an elected official later on down the line. But just a little bit later, after working for the treasurer's office, my state senator at that time, who was, by the way, the former chairwoman of the education committee, she asked me to run for office. And I thought, wow, I would never, think of that before. But I did. I started looking at, maybe if the door was open. So I served in the House of Representatives as my first term for 2 years. And then I served in the state Senate for another 6 years. I was the Senate Republican Majority Leader at the time. I was the second woman to hold that position following Sandra Day O'Connor, our US Justice from Arizona. She served back in 1973 as the first Majority Leader woman in the United States back in 1973. So 44 years in between, we had a wonderful opportunity to share some time personally on the state Senate floor. And the floor is where all of our desks are. And we just shared a moment just together. And I asked her back then, what was it that was different? Being an elected official in the 1970s. And she said, well, look around the desks of all of these elected senators here in Arizona. In the Senate, you have a desk, and some of the individuals may decorate it with an elephant if they're a Republican, or a donkey if they're a Democrat, just to show students who come for tours what political party they are affiliated with. And it's kind of a fun way to decorate your desk. And so she said, we never paid any attention to party affiliation back when she was serving in the 1970s. They just went to work and got the good work done. And I share this story because it was so moving for me, and really a testament of how she governed as a public policymaker first, before the political, stuff that's all around. Really, it gets back to the people that you're serving, and it gets back to the policies that you're making and how they affect real people and real homes and real workplaces and in schools, and all of these discussions that we've had around the table. That's why it's my style to bring so many different people with different diverse viewpoints to the table to understand how it is affecting their community. Those are the lessons that I learned in the career path that I took. Who would have thought when I was a Senate education staff member that I would one day be elected? Let's see, that was in 1996, right? And then in 2010, I was elected, to the state legislature. I never would have guessed that those past jobs, those, earlier experiences prepared me on how to read a bill, how to study how you can make it better, how you can work across the table and really get the good work done. Those are some of the things that really helped prepare me for my current role. I'm going to talk about what I do as a state treasurer just for a moment. We manage $40 billion in the state dollars that flow between our state agencies. That's a lot of money throughout the year. And we also invest those funds. So we have roughly $20.9 billion in assets under management under our investment team, internal in our office. And when I first started in 2019 as the new state treasurer, we had $15.4 billion. So today at almost $21 billion, it's over a 36% increase. And in my opinion, I think that's great news for Arizona from an economic perspective. It means money is flowing throughout our state, even in the midst of a pandemic. Every day I get to take a look at our operating balance to see how much is in our checkbook. And so today, for instance, we were at over 75% increased If you compare year over year on the very same date last year, and that is in the middle of a global pandemic, it would be over 80% if you were to take all the federal funds that have come into Arizona as well. So we're doing really well. Our economy is floating, and we're doing okay from the perspective that who would have guessed in the middle of a global pandemic that Arizona would still be in its economic stronghold. And I really feel that we will be stronger and come out of this much quicker than many other states in Arizona. I also want to share with you my passion for financial education in Arizona. This is where many of you students who are in schools, if you're in high school, there is a new law that I helped pass just a couple of years ago when I became treasurer that requires you now to have at least one semester of financial education before you graduate from high school. What is financial education? It's when you learn how to manage your own money. And say, you have your first job and you're starting to learn to budget. What do you want to spend? What do you want to save? What do you want to put aside? How much do you want to invest, even as a young person, to put aside so that the money can grow over time? Paying off your first, your credit card balance month to month, so you don't get penalized. Being able to balance your checkbook. Those are really simple things, and this is now going to be taught in our Arizona high school classrooms. And I love that we're able to, move the needle so that people can be more responsible with money management. We also we put together a financial literacy task force so that we can look at how we can help single parent homes, who are on fixed income budgets and they just need some help on managing their money. Senior citizens, again, who might have lost a spouse, who, manage the checkbook, and veterans and military families, and those who are even out of high school, maybe looking at getting out into the real world. We call them emerging adults. They need help with their, getting right off into the real world and being able to be responsible with their money. That's financial education. And again, I have a heart for it. It also started, we started looking at how can we help those who are looking to save for college. And that's maybe where you might be, in high school, and you might start thinking, okay, well, where am I? Can I afford this university, or can I afford this community college? Maybe I don't want to go to a traditional college and I want to do some workforce training first, right? I mean, those are so many of the questions that our families in Arizona ask when it's time to kind of look at post high school. So our office recently took over. It's a wonderful program called the AZ 529 Education Savings Program. And it's for families and young students who are looking to start saving for post high school, which means when you're out of high school, what are you going to do? This could mean an apprenticeship program, a workforce development program. You can do university, community college, whatever you'd like to do, but it's education related. This is where the savings programs can start very early. And our office has a website that's az529.gov. I encourage you to visit it. If you have young children or even high school kids, it's never too late. It's never too early. I mean, it's always the right time to start saving and looking at the future, because the opportunities are endless when you put some money aside and to watch it grow. Just an example, if you put $50 aside for 18 years at 6%, you have over $18,000 ready to go for endless opportunities post high school. And so that is the 529 program in our office, az529.gov. I am so excited. I want to provide an opportunity for families who have never had someone go to college before be able to have these opportunities. And so we are marketing this across the state in multiple languages so that we can get this out to a wide group of individuals, and they've never heard about it before. And I want to share with them how important it is to stay, involved in an education setting. It allows for our workforce to be more educated, and it will grow and flourish when you have these wonderful opportunities. Again, I am so blessed to be here. I'm trying to look at some of the things that I wanted to touch on, but I, again, just really am honored to serve as your state treasurer. The state treasurer is one of the constitutional offices statewide. And so our constituents are the entire state, every single beautiful corner of Arizona. And we have 15 counties, as you know. And in my first year in office, it was my desire to visit every single county in Arizona, and I did in 6 months. It was really important to see the communities where they are, to talk about the issues that are important to them, because you cannot govern, a statewide office just in the seat of Maricopa County, Phoenix, Arizona. The state is wide and it's diverse and it's, got wonderful stories to share, but really you have to bring the people together and go to them to be able to meet their needs. So it's been a real blessing. I just came back from Yavapai County and Cochise County end of last week. So I'm on the road a lot, but again, it was really a privilege to be invited to speak with you today. And thank you for your dedication and commitment to science-related education. It is so important that we continue these developments in this area, particularly in the midst of COVID, because if you look at where we are today, if we didn't have the experts in the labs, the healthcare related experts in our critical need areas to serve communities all across Arizona, these come from great STEM related education programs, and they start in the classroom. And that's why this wonderful festival is here. It's to be able to engage young people like yourselves to see the needs and meet those needs and educate our young people to be ready to go, so that when we're in the midst of a crisis like we are in this global pandemic, we have safe and healthy communities. And that's where we are today. I really just want to thank your organizers, your sponsors for all that they do, because it's not necessarily about today. If you look at where we are, it's about tomorrow. So thank you so much. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
I think you hit so many of our questions, and we are truly thankful. One question I did have from our chief science officers, who are 6th through 12th grade
Yes.
ambassadors for STEM in their classrooms, their campuses, and their communities. They would love to know, what advice would you give to your 14-year-old self?
I love the question. Thank you. So my 14-year-old self, I really was involved when I was in high school. So I had my first student council election. I ran for office. An interesting fact is that I was served as my class president for 3 out of the 4 years of high school. So I guess I had the bug even back then for just being involved in engaging in discussions about leadership and how you can meet the needs of students. At that time, that's what I was talking about. How do we raise money so that we have, the best prom ever? And, little things. I was over Super Bowl weekend. It took me back to an old fundraising thing I used to do, because as I was serving my children nachos and I was putting the cheese sauce over it, I said to my kids, I used to pour a bunch of nacho cheese on chips at the high school football games every Friday night. And I said, we raised money this way so that we could have money to go, for sports trips or whatever it was that we were raising money for. But if you start early, my 14-year-old self would be, get involved, get engaged, be part of the conversation, make a difference. It doesn't matter how old you are, you have an important voice at the table.
That is excellent. We love that you're so personable, and it's so wonderful to have somebody who represents the M in STEM, because a lot of our students, they love math, but it's probably the least focused on in the STEM community conversation. So one of our chief science officers out of Michigan is actually hosting an interactive math festival on the 20th,
Nice.
and with Julia Robinson's Math Festival. So we are so pleased to have you as a partner in engaging our families and our communities. And we appreciate you taking your time to chat with us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and have a wonderful festival.
Thank you.
Thank you
Take
so much.
care. Thanks, everyone.
All right, stop live stream. That was awesome. You were perfect.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I feel like you've done it a few times.
Oh, well, I love speaking to young people, so I wish it was in person. But
Yeah.
again, when we open back up and you have this again, I would love to, be a part of it. So please
Oh,
let me know
yeah.
and keep me looped in.
I love it because your leadership background too, for our chief science officers, maybe even keynote at an event or
Oh, I would
our
love it.
STEM summit, right? We have,
Yes.
hopefully back in person,
You
1,500
know, and
people talking about STEM.
absolutely, and I would love to, if you do have something that's even more national or whatever you'd like, I can find photos. I actually had a STEM day at the Capitol, and I was thinking about it. I just couldn't find the photos, but I invited STEM students, and they were doing building games
Nice.
right in the heart of our caucus room. And I wanted to share with my older colleagues because I was on the younger
Right.
side in the state senate. I had both my babies when I was state senator, but many of my colleagues did not understand what we were talking about when we were talking about science and technology and how it relates to education and the non-traditional way of teaching. And it doesn't have to be a textbook, it could be a
Right.
computer. And so I thought, wow. And at the time I was serving as the education chairwoman. And so I was thinking, how do I get my colleagues who are 70 plus, rural, they understand that this is important, but they've never seen it in live action before. So I invited a class of STEM related students, and they came and they showed our seniors senators how it's done. And so it's like a young student
Yeah.
teaching an elected senior member of the state senate. And I loved it. The photos were awesome, and I'm just trying to find if I can get some. This is how you can share the story about how important it is in science and technology, just in our public policy making environment.
Well, and I think once, if you do find those, sharing that
Yeah.
to the students of saying, you have that bug now being an elected chief science officer, it could
Yes,
lead to you being an elected member of the state senate, an elected member of,
absolutely.
all of these other committees that are
Oh, yes.
making a difference. So that's excellent.
Absolutely. Yes. And we even have spots where you have a student member, a voting member who's a student. So they don't have to be an adult in some of these boards and commissions. And so, again, I am happy to help where I can. But again, thank you so much for all you do. And I really meant it. This is sort of like the time and place and, where we are today, where you really can see how important this industry is.